You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back to the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, chilling with my guy Frank Tucker, representing the Crib, South Florida. This is our weekly segment at the Crib. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, the Storm Tracker podcast, on all platforms. And also subscribe to the website, canescounty.com, part of the rivals.com network. Make sure you comment, subscribe, and share this YouTube channel as well, live from Canes County. Frank, it's Thanksgiving weekend, and there's a lot to be thankful for, just generally in life, right? But I wanted to ask you, man, like for this Miami Hurricanes team, who is now in year 2 with Coach Cristobal, and they've improved. Let's just say that they have improved as far as points and yards is concerned from last year, which was downright just abysmal. If you're a Hurricanes fan, Frank, what are you thankful for going into Thanksgiving?
I think you got to be thankful for a bright future. You just had a top 10 class last year in 2023. You have the potential for a top 5 class in 2024 based on the flips that we did post on an article. You can check that out on Canes County. We posted that yesterday, I believe. And listen, you got to be positive about the improvement that was displayed this season. It's not 5 wins. They're bowl eligible for the first time under Coach Cristobal. The offense has improved drastically from last season. The defense looks really solid overall. I know last week was a tougher performance for the defense, but Jeff Brom is one of the best offensive coaches in college football. And that's a team that has a chance to jump into the college football playoff, depending on what happens in the ACC championship game and what happens in that Texas and Pac-12 championships. So overall, I like where Miami's headed, and I think you have to be thankful that things are going in the right direction. For a long time, we saw stagnant, play from teams. We would see them go from 10 wins back down to like 7. We would see, a positive recruiting class, and then we'd be missing South Florida guys. Overall, Coach Cristobal has put us on a path back to relevancy. And I think that's something to be thankful for this holiday season.
I agree. The program is definitely going in the right direction, and I have to be thankful for this coaching staff. First, it starts at the top with Coach Cristobal. I think he is an elite recruiter. The fact that he was able to get a top 10 class with just 5 wins last year, well on his way to another top 10 class with now just 6 wins and disappointing losses to, Georgia Tech and NC State. I think, if this team lost to UNC, Florida State, and Louisville, I think a lot of Miami fans would be even more thankful. But even with the losses, you still got to be thankful of what this coaching staff was able to do with this team this year, especially at the coordinator position. I mean, yeah, Dawson, I guess, can be questioned about, some of the play calls that he made, but overall it's a drastic improvement from last season. And Tyler Van Dyke, I think, is the reason why this offense hasn't really taken a significant jump to the next level, but it's an ascension nonetheless. I think this team runs the ball very well, and they, on the defensive side of the ball, is one of the best in the country, as far as stopping the run, especially. So I have to be thankful for Lance Guidry as well. He's really just getting a lot out of these guys and the rest of his coaching staff as well. Coach D. Nick has done a great job with these linebackers. I think Adai's done a pretty good job with these DBs, especially with DP, who's been playing absolutely great. Hopefully he'll be back, sometime this season. And The D line as well has been playing at a really good level with, Ruben Bain playing very well, Jaden Wayne coming along, and Jared Harrison Hunt, I feel like, has taken a significant step up as well under the tutelage of Jason Taylor and Joe Salavea. And I can't say enough about, of course, Alex Mirabal, where the offensive line is arguably one of the best in the entire country. And, the running backs have also all, I think, have excelled at some point this season. So I'm very thankful for this coaching staff. But let's talk a little bit about Lance Guidry. He kind of made some headlines yesterday. He was asked about his future. A lot of rumors about him maybe going back to LSU, to where he's from. He's from Louisiana. I believe that would probably be a dream job for him. But he came out and said that he loves Miami, and that he's not going anywhere for now, basically. Um, Frank, when you heard that, do you think that's real talk, or do you think that's coach speak coming from the Miami DC Guidry?
Now, I'm not sitting here saying that I think he's going to leave, but I do think it was coach speak. We hear this every time there's rumors around a coach leaving. I don't want to leave, right? Because there was no confirmation from Guidry that he's not leaving. He never said, I'm staying, I'm going to be at the University of Miami next season. He's kind of gave this whole spiel about he came here to help build something. He feels that they're building something special in Miami, that he has no, like, that he doesn't want to leave. That's what he said. I don't want to leave. And I think that was the biggest thing. He didn't put a definitive answer on it, and it was almost a deflection of sorts. So for me, it was definitely coach speak. He's putting himself in a spot where he's not doing anything but damage control. It's, there was a report that came out, obviously, that he was considering to leave, and like you said, and is there a chance that he could go back home for the right money? Absolutely, because the buyout for him, from what I'm understanding, is minute. It's a small buyout. He doesn't make what the top coordinators are making in college football, from what I understand. And I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Miami, bump up the money a little bit to keep him around.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a conversation of that sort, because you can't lose Lance Guidry after you just discovered him in a way, thanks to really Dennis Smith, who's the chief of staff essentially at the University of Miami, the director of football operations. His relationship and ties to the Louisiana area helped to bring in Coach Guidry, and I think that they kind of took a chance on him. He's never coached Power 5 football before. He's come in and solidified himself as one of the best coordinators in college football. And there's going to be a litany of suitors out there, especially in the SEC, where money grows on trees. So I hope he stays. I think that he does, just because of the relationships that are in place at the University of Miami right now. But would I be surprised to see him go back home for $2 million a year to LSU or something along those lines? I would not.
Yeah, I think it's real talk. I mean, Guidry comes off as a really genuine guy. He comes off, he doesn't come off like salesy, as some of the other coaches do. So I do think that he was genuine when he said that, hey, I haven't heard anything from my agent. This is just talk. This is just people chirping or whatnot. So I think that part is genuine. I do think that he genuinely does want to stay here at Miami. But if you look at like how he got here, right? He was supposed to go to Tulane, right? He basically agreed to go to Tulane. And then out of nowhere, Miami swoops in and gets him down to Coral Gables. So this is someone, I think, that his mind can be changed. I'm not saying it will be, but I'm just saying, if you just base it on what has happened or how he got here, then it's definitely a chance that he could change his mind on everything. And I agree with you. I do think Miami will, make him an offer that he can't refuse, so I think they realize the quality of coach that he is, and are going to paint a picture for him that looks great for him to stay. The question is, like you said as well, that will LSU, outbid Miami? That's the thing. Of course, he would love to go back home to Louisiana. LSU, let's just call it what it is. They are definitely a more premier program than Miami is, as far as getting to the playoff, winning a championship in the last, I think 7 years. I think it was. Um, Maybe less than that. So it's definitely going to be an enticing offer if they indeed try to lure him out of there. But I do think he was genuine with what he was saying, as far as trying to build the culture here, that he loves it here, and that this is his job right now. And I think he could have deflected it even more. He could have totally kind of dismissed it even more and not really open up about how he felt about Miami. He didn't have to say that. He generally didn't have to tell the press that, oh, okay, well, I love it here. I love Miami. I love the players that we're bringing in. I love the players that we have. He didn't have to say all that if he was truly being dismissive. So hope he stays. He's done wonders for this defense. Hope a lot of these other players stay too. I think if he stays, that will determine if a lot of these other players indeed stay as well, and if recruits stay with this recruiting class.
Yeah, I think he's being genuine as well. I think that he wants to stay. I think he likes where he's at. I do think that he's comfortable here at the University of Miami. He doesn't have a head coach who's meddling into his game plan. Mario's more into the offensive side than he is the defensive side. He's able to coach safeties, so he has control of that defensive back room, really. And he's the head coach of the defense, and it's worked. He's got a talented group, a young nucleus that's coming up from underneath as well. And they do have a really good class in the 2024 cycle. So I think that he does want to stay. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see teams start sniffing around him, because he is one of the best in the country. And he's proven himself on that Power 5 level in a way that he did before. This was the one thing that he didn't have on his resume. He was once a head coach, so he was proven that he can do that and lead a team. He's proven that he could be a top coordinator in the group of 5 ranks. He's proven that he can be a recruiter. He's proven that he's been a guy that can grab guys out of the portal. As soon as he got to Tulane, a bunch of his guys from Marshall jumped over immediately. So I think that everything on his resume has been pretty much checked off, except for a Power 5 head coaching job. So that's one thing I'd be a little bit worried about as well, if somebody tried to dip into that, say like a lower Power 5 team had a head coach opening, maybe, reach out to him in that regard. So, but overall, I do think that he wants to stay at Miami, and that relationship with Dennis Smith could prove vital to keeping him here in Coral Gables.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be, coaching carousel is always fun to watch. We'll see how it all plays out there. But most importantly, we need to see how this season is going to play out for the Miami Hurricanes. Miami goes up to Chestnut Hill on Black Friday to play the Boston College Eagles. Miami 6-5, and Boston College is 6-5. And the players and the coaches have been saying, okay, well, Miami is better than what their record shows. And now they get to play a team with the exact same record as them. So it's going to be interesting to see if Miami is up for this game, right? It's a sleepy 12 o'clock game on a Black Friday. It's going to be cold, and I'm not sure if Miami's going to be as motivated to play this game after you play 2 top 10 teams, with one of them being your biggest rival. It's hard to think that they are going to be as excited to play this Boston College team as they were these last 2 weeks. And I mean, yeah, Boston College is a quote unquote, I guess, rival, but it's like 4th or 5th on the list, maybe even 6th. as far as rivals are concerned for Miami. So they're already qualified for a bowl game. You already know that's going to happen. So they're really kind of just playing for pride here. Do you think Miami is going to be up for this game?
Absolutely. It's a Mario Cristobal-led team. I don't think we've seen them at any point not be up for a game this year. Like, even when they would play Bethune and when they would play Temple or they would play somebody along those lines, they got up for the games. We saw them have the enthusiasm. It's really the only thing that's been missing at Miami is quarterback play. Is Tyler Van Dyke going to be old Tyler Van Dyke, or is he going to be the Tyler Van Dyke we saw at points at Louisville, the guy we saw at Texas A&M? That's really the question for me, because I feel like this defense is going to come out. They're going to play really good football. You got a number of those guys automatically coming back. So there's going to be pride on the table for them to be pushing for an 8-win season rather than trying to, scrape with 6 or 7, because it just looks so much better when you win those 8 games. If you come out 8-5 rather than a 6-7 or 7-6 season, there's an excitement that goes into the next season. Like, all right, listen, we finished strong. We lost those 3 games. 2 of them were tough against top 10 opponents. I think that the defense is going to come to play. I know Mark Fletcher is going to come to play. We know Xavier Restrepo is going to come to play. I think Jacoby George is on a tear right now, and I think he wants to finish the season strong because of what it could do to his draft stock heading into next season. Everybody, I feel like, is going to be right there, ready to go. That offensive line under Alex Mirabal, I don't think that they need any extra motivation. It could be Javion Cohen's last game. We don't know what's going to happen there. He did just accept that Senior Bowl invite. So I think that I think that there's going to be some pride there for him, and the fact that this is probably his last college football game. And then, it's really just on TBD. Are we going to see TBD? Because he's the only quarterback that's going to be playing in this game. I don't think Jakari Brown is going to suit up at all. Or he's going to suit up, but I don't think he's going to see the field at all. And we know Emory, what his situation is. So if TBD comes out to play, I like Miami's chances against Boston College. But Boston College is very much in a similar situation to Miami in the fact that I think that they could be better than their record. They could have knocked off Florida State. They've gotten solid quarterback play, which was surprising coming into the year based on expectations. They've always been a well-coached team, no matter who the head coach was. And they're just kind of one of those tough, gritty teams that have that Northeast type, mentality. And they're going to come in and they're going to try to knock off Miami as if it's their Super Bowl. So is Tyler Van Dyke going to be able to live up to the challenge of that? That's the only thing that we got to see.
Yeah, with Tyler Van Dyke, it's either turnover Van Dyke or Tyler Van Dynes. And which one are we going to see on Friday is really the question. Boston College is 71st in turnover margin, better than Miami, who's ranked 97th in turnover margin. Miami's -4. And Boston College is -1. So for me, it's going to come down to turnovers again, because when you line these teams up, Miami should win the game because they have the better athletes. I think they have the better skill players as well. I think they're better on special teams. So just from a football playing perspective, I think Miami has the better team. Vegas also thinks so as well. They're 8-point favorites on the road, which I don't really like, because heavy home dogs usually cover.
Yeah, we say that, but Miami didn't cover against Louisville, unfortunately.
Technically they were the favorite that game. I don't know why, but technically they were. But yeah, so that's the thing for me, and I agree with you, man. TVD has to play well, and sadly, yeah, we're not going to see Jakari Brown, or at least we don't think so. And it could be Javion Cohen's last game. He could opt out of the bowl game, and you could be losing some other players as well to the NFL draft. It could be your 2 safeties last regular season game as well. So when you look at this game, what are the keys for you, and who are some of the MVPs that you want to see stand out for Miami?
Can Miami limit the turnovers? We saw against Louisville that most of the time they were able to do that, right? And Tyler Van Dyke had a pretty good game. Mark Fletcher was obviously spectacular. Can the offense replicate what they did last week and score over 30 points, which isn't something we've seen from Miami over the last few years, really? And can the defense get back on track? Last week you kind of got pieced up by Jeff Brom and that offensive scheme that he's got going on. We saw Cam Kinchens and James Williams look really confused at times, missing tackles continuously on the back end of the defense. Overall, I think that the corners played pretty decent. Receivers are going to make plays. And, there were some throws that were NFL-level throws on Damari Brown that were completed. A toe tap, one-handed grab, basically, along the sidelines. I don't know if there was much that Damari Brown could have done to stop that from happening. Sometimes there's just plays that are made. But we can't see what happened with Jaden Davis and Corey Couch, again, where guys are running into each other. I want to see them get back to the disciplined, technically sound defense that we saw for most of the season with some more pass rush. There were times where their quarterback, the Plummer kid, was sitting back there for 4 or 5 seconds, and you and I were saying in the press box, like, are they going to get to this guy, or are they going to move them? They're going to make him move off his spot, and it just didn't happen. So I would love to see a little bit more from Leonard Taylor if he's playing in this game. I know last week he was out. Are we going to see more from Ruben Bain? I know that he's had a spectacular season, but last week wasn't one of his better performances, I would say. And overall, are they going to be able to come together and have that balanced approach and really bring it all together in a way that we haven't seen Miami do since really Texas A&M? So that's really the keys to the game for me. MVPs, it's going to fall on Tyler Van Dyke once again, because even when Mark Fletcher has a game where he has 150 yards and a touchdown, Miami doesn't win. So I don't think it's dependent on the run game anymore. It's really dependent on how Tyler Van Dyke plays. And the other is Cam Kinchens, because Miami's defense seems to win or lose on defense based on how Cam Kinchens played. He missed multiple tackles in necessary situations last week. I know he had a really nice interception, but there were also times in coverage where he just looked lost, right? The tight ends completely took advantage of Miami last week. I think Louisville came into that game with like 7 tight end catches, and I think they matched that season total in that game, basically. So overall, Cam Kinchens has to step up. The 2 most important players in this team, from really what we talked about at the start of the year, was Tyler Van Dyke and Cam Kinchens, and it's really going to end the year on that same note. So I think if those 2 guys play up to the caliber that they can play, Miami gets a win here, and they could probably win in convincing fashion and go into the bowl game with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, for me, this comes down to a couple of things. I think the running game will travel, and Javion Cohen said it himself a couple of weeks back, saying that the running game, that's something that you pack on the road because that basically travels with you. So I think that running game is going to get going here, and I want to see a very conservative game. I want to see a check down Tyler Van Dyke, and Miami just needs to stop really the QB run here, because Castellanos, their quarterback, can get out of the pocket and make some plays with his legs. Miami's been, kind of they've been susceptible to give up the run at times to the quarterback. So I think if they could just contain him, put him in the pocket, and make him throw on third down, then I think Miami has a really good chance to win. I think if they just don't beat themselves, they should come out with a win. But I do think it's going to be close, and I do think there's a very good chance that Boston College covers in this game, because 8 points I think is a lot for 2 teams that are pretty equal. I mean, we've talked about it before. The ACC is pretty much an even conference across the board. And, like teams like Virginia, and as we see Pitt last week, who has 2 losses, at the time had, defeated Boston College last week. So yeah, I think any team could beat any team at any given time. And Boston College is going to want to end their season on a high note because, they won 5 straight games and then they lost 2 in a row. So they kind of want to get back to where they were in the middle of the season here. So Boston College is going to fight. They're going to fight hard. Their crowd is going to be, somewhat into it. That's not really a feared crowd by any stretch, but it's going to be, there's going to be some juice in the building, like, just because it's Miami. Teams love to beat Miami and kind of have that on their resume. So I think it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a close game. It's going to come down, I think, to the final possession or the final 2 possessions. I think Miami has a chance to win by 2 scores. But I think likely from what we've seen this year in the ACC, Miami's either won by 1 possession or they've lost by 1 possession in a number of games. I think it was just a couple of games that NC State and North Carolina are I think the only games that didn't come down to 1 possession when it comes to conference games. So there's nothing that tells me that this is not going to be a close game. As far as MVPs are concerned, I expect, Kiko to have another solid game. To me, he's been probably the most consistent defender on this team. James Williams has had his up and down moments. You mentioned Cam Kinchin's also having his up and down moments. Lennon Taylor has been up and down. Ruben Bain has now been up and down because people know who he is now, and they're double teaming him. But Kiko Malanoa has been the guy that has been consistent game in, game out. I expect him to be consistent in this game as well and be a difference maker when it comes to stopping the run and stopping their quarterback from escaping the pocket. On offense, you already know, man. It's all about TVD. Can he make plays? Can he not turn the ball over? Can he run with his legs again, like he did in that last game against Louisville? I think the switch is kind of flipped for Tyler Van Dyke, and I think that he kind of understands what his faults were in those last few games where he was turnover prone. And I think he turns it around in this game and shows what he can do. I'm sure there's going to be some family in the building for him as well, because he's from the Northeast area in Connecticut. And, he's going to want to show out in front of his, friends and family in Boston. So I do think Miami comes out with a win here and goes into the bowl game with some momentum. The momentum is important, of course, when it comes to recruiting, because we're like full steam ahead into the peak of recruiting here with National Signing Day or Early Signing Day coming up here in December, about a month away. How important is it for Miami to get a win when it comes to recruiting, Frank?
It's super important because Miami's gone on a 3-game skid, and we went from hearing that Jordan Lyle was going to commit to the University of Miami to now wondering if it's going to happen. So that's what the difference between wins and losses is in college football right now. And Miami is on flip alert for upwards of 11 prospects, 12 prospects if you consider some guys that are on the outside looking in. But sorry about that. But yeah, Miami is on flip alert for upwards of a dozen guys right now. They have the potential to get some of the best players in the country in the boat in this 2024 cycle. And right now they're sitting at 10th in the country, and they've only won 11 games in the past 2 years. I think that's huge. It's a huge development for what they've been doing this season. comparative to the results, right? You have some of the best in the country. Zaquan Patterson is a 5-star. Now you're about to get Cedrick Bailey, an NC State 4-star quarterback, who, with the new update, could be the #1 quarterback in the state. So if you're able to hit a bunch of boxes, like at receiver, they got 3 blue chip guys. All of them elite players, top 150 players in the country, basically. On the offensive line, you have 5 building block players after you added 5 in the last class. On the defensive line, you're bringing in 6 guys. At defensive back, you have the potential of adding Ellis Robinson, who's the #1 cornerback in the country. If you get a win against Boston College, get to 8 wins, that helps ease the decision for him, in my opinion, of flipping from a Georgia, who's a national championship contender, to Miami. Because it's a little bit harder when Miami's sitting at 6 wins and Georgia's sitting at 12, for a kid to make that decision to switch to University of Miami. Because I think the feeling for him is that Miami feels like home and Georgia feels like development. So Miami's got to be able to bridge that gap a little bit. And I think if they do, over the last month of this cycle, they got a really good chance of flipping the top cornerback in this class. But overall, Miami's doing a really good job on the trail. I think that we're going to get some good news within the next 24 to 48 hours on a younger prospect. So that's something to watch. And I think that, over the next couple weeks, things are going to be really noisy in Miami recruiting, because we're going to get some flips. We're going to get some commitments. And I think that, listen, there's going to be some attrition as well. But I think it's going to be more attrition on guys being pushed out of the class rather than losing guys in the class. I know that there's a lot of questions on Chance Robinson. From what I've been told, he has shut down his recruitment, and all the noise around Ole Miss and potentially going to Florida or Ohio State. I think that's out the door now, because of the possible inclusion of Cedrick Bailey in this class, his little league quarterback and close friend. Another name that keeps popping up and potential flip candidates for Miami away is Elijah Lofton to Texas. I think that Miami's in a good spot there. I don't think that they're going to lose him. I think that they're selling him on the idea that Miami's not using the tight end right now because there's not a tight end in the building that can make an impact on the field, right? You got a blocking tight end. Elijah Arroyo has been pretty much injured the entire season. And Jaleel Skinner has just not developed into the guy that everybody thought when he flipped from Alabama to Miami. So I think that there could be a Brock Bowers type potential impact from an Elijah Lofton coming to the University of Miami. And I'm sure that kid sees that potential as well.
Awesome. Definitely visit canescounty.com for more on potential flips. Frank put together a really nice article on that. And I have to mention a player that has been mentioned in this cycle and in your article, Frank, was Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Jeremiah Smith is, to me, definitely the best player when it comes to all recruits in the 2024 cycle. And LeBron James had to chime in yesterday and say, okay, can't wait for him to come to Ohio. A lot of Miami fans kind of, clapped back and said, hey, you left Ohio to come to Miami. So is there still smoke there with Jeremiah Smith? And do you think he sticks with his commitment to Ohio State, or Miami has a chance? I forgot to shout out Kevin Beard when I was shouting out all of the coaches that have done a tremendous job. And of course, Kevin Beard, has arguably done the best job. So definitely shout out to Kevin Beard as well. Definitely thankful for him on this Thanksgiving. So when it comes to JJ, man, give me a percentage, bro. Give me a percentage of the chances Miami can flip him. So
shout out to Coach Joe Brown as well on that response. That was a perfect response to LeBron James' tweet. He decided to leave Ohio. I think he was the one that kind of kicked that off. But I think if I would I did make a prediction in that article. You can, once again, check out that flip article on canescounty.com. It's on our front page, so you can go take a look at that from yesterday. But I would say that there's probably like a third split between Florida State, Miami, and Ohio State. I don't think that any decision is being made right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jeremiah Smith take this all the way to February, because he's going to want to see what Brian Hartline does at Ohio State. That Michigan-Ohio State game might decide what happens to that staff at Ohio State. So I think that there's, a lot of potential for, what happens at Ohio State, and that could potentially move them completely out of the process completely. And then, listen, Florida State made huge dividends, happen when they beat Miami. They showed him something that I guess he didn't see before, because from everything I heard, it was a huge, huge movement for them up the rankings in his consideration. So I think that Florida State is probably one of those teams that has a strong possibility to land him. I know Hurricane fans aren't going to love to hear that, but Miami kind of counteracted that by offering CJ Bailey. And I think that CJ Bailey's offer is independent of anything that happens with Jeremiah Smith. I know a lot of people are going to say that Miami just offered CJ just because they want JJ, but CJ Bailey can commit to the University of Miami regardless of what happens with Jeremiah Smith. But I do think that it helps the process, right? You have all these members of this Purple Machine group from that Miami Gardens program, Miami Gardens Ravens program, and then you have a bunch of his other teammates like Zaquan Patterson in tow. So for me, it only makes sense for him to end up at the University of Miami. You have the potential to make an immediate impact here at home, get on the field early. Shannon Dawson has familiarity with Geno Smith. Geno Smith's already shouted out his former offensive coordinator. We know Kevin Beard has a relationship with South Florida kids that is different than everybody else around the country. And he's shown this year that he can help develop his receivers into a way that the other guys couldn't. Because if you look at the production from guys like Jacoby George and Xavier Sheppel this year, they're having career seasons. And they look just so much better than they did before. And if we got competent quarterback play the whole year, we could be looking at a Miami offense that had 2,000-yard receivers, which is a crazy statistic. Like, Miami has completely outplayed teams like Ohio State and Clemson and all these teams around the country that are supposed to be wide receiver U-type places. And listen, that's a huge credit to Kevin Beard. So I think that everything is kind of matching up for Miami to really have a strong run here. In the end, I think he ultimately does decommit from Ohio State, and I think this becomes a Miami and Florida State battle in the end.
Wow, that would be major news, and of course, LeBron James would be crying in his beer if that happens. But hey, home is where your heart is, and hopefully JJ elects to stay home, because that will set the world on fire. And what a receiving core that would be, just to have Jeremiah Smith, Nye Carr, Chance Robinson, and JoJo Trader. That'd be an unbelievable haul at wide receiver for the Miami Hurricanes. We'll see if Cristobal Magic or Mario Magic can come to fruition here in the 2024 cycle. Anything else you want to talk about? I know you want to talk about your Western Wildcats, making some noise in the state finals here, or playoffs. I mean, let me not get ahead of myself. Any other, matchups or anything you want to talk about as far as high school football or recruiting?
Oh, there's some good ones. Let's start off with Coconut Creek, St. Thomas Aquinas. This is one that we've been waiting on. This is the ultimate David versus Goliath type game. Coconut Creek having a Cinderella type season, and St. Thomas Aquinas putting running clocks on everybody in the playoffs so far. So I think that's going to be a really good game. Watch for Elijah Cannon in this one at cornerback for Coconut Creek. Likely going to flip to Oregon State. Love his game. Jordan Lyle, potential Miami flip, has been on fire, just making highlight plays after highlight plays. Had a 90-yard touchdown last week where he broke a couple tackles along the sidelines. Just an exceptional player. So that's one I'm excited about. Obviously, Western Columbus, that's home for me. Western and this is a matchup we've already seen before. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. That one's going to be at 4:00 at Tropical Park on Friday. Listen, Kobe Howard, 1,600 total yards and 13 touchdowns in 9 games this year. Kid is a monster. But he's going to be going against a team that is filled with a lot of stars on their own. Dylan Russell is a Miami commit. He's going to be a penetrator on that defensive line. Dylan Stevenson, a Stanford commit, really good player. Jose Leon, one of our favorite players in South Florida, is going to be making plays in the slot. And Bryce Fitzgerald, a Miami target, a guy that I think potentially ends up in that 2025 class, is going to be making plays in all 3 facets of the game. And obviously they're led by Alberto Mendoza, who's dealing with a little bit of an injury right now, as well as Davi Belfort from Western. But it's going to be a battle of 2 quarterbacks to see who can tough it out in a way that leads their team to a potential state championship run. And then, listen, there's 2 more matchups that I'm really excited about. Chaminade Madonna gets their final test of the season, in my opinion, against Cardinal Newman, who's a really good team. Nashawn Montgomery, Ricky Knight, Josh, Philistine. They got some good players. Luke Warnock at quarterback. They're looking for some get back because I think they lost like 42-7 last year. So I think that's going to be a fun game to watch in the first half. Let's see if Chaminade continue to be the dominant team
in the first half.
Chaminade is a force to be reckoned with right now. But listen, Cardinal Newman has a really good coaching staff. They're led by one of the greatest coaches in Palm Beach County history. So I think that's going to be a game that surprised some people a little bit. And then obviously the highlight game of the weekend, the preeminent game in high school football, in my opinion, and that is Miami Central versus Miami Norland. You have upwards of like 40 prospects in this game. This was a game that went to double overtime the first time around, ended on a field goal, which in that game, I think that there were like 4 blocked extra points or field goals. So for the fact that it ended on a field goal was just an incredible, climax, finality of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that this time around, it's going to be just as good. These are 2 teams that are extremely emotional. This is going to be a 7:30 game at Travis Powell Stadium in the heart of Miami. So if you are in South Florida in the holidays for the holiday season, or if you were just a South Florida homegrown product, you might want to go check out those 2 games. You can go back to back, go from Tropical to Travis Powell, and I think that you're going to see some really good football this weekend.
Sounds great. We know you got Chaminade, and we know you got Western, but who you got with Norland and Central?
I'm going to go Central this time around. I think that their performance against Booker T last week has maybe sparked Wayne McCoy in a way that wasn't there the first time around. So Luane, is balling right now on both sides of the ball. He had 2 touchdowns last week with an interception against a really good Booker T team that gave both Norland and Central a tough time the first time around. And they were up 35-7 with the game pretty much wrapped up. So listen, man, Miami Central, that drive for 5 is a real thing for them. The national championship pursuit is obviously done after 3 losses, but this is still a team that can finish the season like 12-3 and still have, one of the greatest runs we've seen in high school football history, not just South Florida history. But listen, Norland is 12-0, and listen, if Enyo Yapor, who's, my pick for, probably player of the year in South Florida this year, if he knocks off Central, I wouldn't be surprised, because that team at Norland is just so good. They proved it the first time around that they can hang with pretty much anybody. They've pretty much backhanded and beat up everybody that's gotten their way except for Booker T and Central. So I think it's going to be one of the best games of the year. It's going to be a sold-out crowd at Travis Powell Stadium, and this is basically the state championship, in my opinion, in that 2M classification.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go in Norland though, man. I picked them at the beginning of the year when I saw them, playing their kickoff classic, and I said from then I was like, this team's gonna win the state championship this year, so I'm gonna stick with that pick. Although they were kind of shaky in the first matchup in this game, I think they might right their wrongs from that game and continue this magical run for the team out of Miami Gardens. So yeah, I'll go in Orland. We'll see what happens. Should be a fun one at Traz. And best football is here in South Florida when it comes to the Sunshine State. That is going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Once again, this is Frank Tucker joining me for At the Crib, our weekly segment. Make sure you follow him, The Crib South Florida, on Twitter and Instagram for South Florida news as well as news regarding the Miami Hurricanes. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County. Subscribe, like, and share, and comment. And make sure you subscribe to the website, canescounty.com, part of the Rivals Network. Until the next episode.